Hey guys, I wanted to have a little chat about drones tonight and getting into FPV drones. This is a Realac 210 that I've been working on, and when I started to work on this drone, there's a lot of things that I didn't know. So what I want to do in this video is show you some of the pieces and components for the drone and help you understand those, so if you go out and start this yourself, you know how all these pieces go together. So let's start with a new build that I'll be working on. So I'll put that guy aside and I'll bring out a frame. This is a 130 millimeter deformation insects frame. It comes with, there's a top plate as well, and there are some standoffs that you see here. So the first thing is getting your frame. There are a lot of frames that you can choose from. Once you get the frame, check the build, and on the build they'll explain the motors, the ESCs, and since this is a video for new people, let's start by showing you an example of, here are a couple of motors. These motors are specifically 1306 3100 kVs, that's the torque power, and they come in a clockwise and counterclockwise orientation. So you always, in this case, I needed to buy a couple packs of those. The next piece that you'll need is something called a power distribution board. So let me try to get that looking good there. So you see that there's a bunch of copper pads on that, and those connect your battery. So you'll need a battery. So here is an example of a battery. This battery is what we call a 3S battery because it has, you can see that there's 3 cells in there. So that's a 3-cell battery. Doesn't produce as much power as a 4S battery. But essentially what happens is the battery will plug into our power distribution board, and the power distribution board, they usually come with a connector. In this case, this is, if we take a look here, here's the bag for it. It says it's an XT60. And this board will convert the battery power into 5 volts and 12 volts. That's important because the separate components, like the camera takes 12 volts, the motors take 12 volts, the transmitter I believe takes 5. So on these pads there are soldering points to get 12 and 5 volts for your auxiliary components, and then the primary pads you see going around there are for the ESCs. So typically on a frame like this, we'll be having the power distribution board on there, and then I'll be taking the negative and the positive and then linking them up to the ESC. Now I keep mentioning ESCs, I should show you one of those. So an ESC, in this case, here we go, this is the DYS-BL Heli ESC. A little difficult to zoom in there. That should get it. That's 20 amps, and the 20 amps work with these particular motors that I have. So what's happening with the ESC is the ESC will be converting, I'll flip that around for more accuracy. Well, here is the basic idea, is the ESC will be taking the direct current power, converting it to the AC power that these brushless motors require. Okay, and that's coming off the power distribution board. The next thing that we'll need is, here's a video transmitter. So I just pulled this out of the pack. This is a video transmitter. This one is switchable. This one specifically has 25 milliwatts, 200 milliwatts, and 600 milliwatts. So in the racing, if you're doing indoor racing, around here we have a small arena, they want 25 milliwatts. doesn't create a lot of interference with the other quadcopters that are flying. There is antenna that goes with it, so you can see the antenna can plug in like that. However, if you want better signal, notice that there's a little clover leaf antenna on this guy. That's typically what you want to be running on these guys, because it sends the signal omnidirectionally, so the drone can be flying around, even behind you, around you, and you can still get your signal. The next piece is the receiver. So this is the receiver. I'm using Free Sky radio, and you can see that in my Tiny Whoop video. This would be mounted to the drone or the quadcopter and connected. That might be 5 volts. Don't quote me on that though. Watch a build video, they'll explain it. That's since I don't have a good memory, that's what I typically do as well. Make sure I'm connecting it in properly, and then that will be receiving the signal, which will then, so that transmitter signal will go into one of these things, and I'll crack this open for us. As you're seeing, this says an SP Racing. Let's focus in on that. SP Racing F3 Acro. This is a flight controller board. Here's what we get in the flight controller kit. Now there are some pins for connecting into the board. We got a bunch of plugs, which are pretty important. Let's dump that stuff out. We got some more pins there. Alright, so this is what the thing looks like. This is for your signal inputs and your power input. And then you have your, this is pretty important, there's a micro USB on that for plugging in and programming and configuring the flight controller. Then there's other separate ports around. I won't get into it in this. You can check that in the build videos. But essentially what happens is your flight controller will send signals out to your ESC. Your ESC will then send those signals into your motor, and then your motor will change the speed at which it's spinning in order to give you your flight dynamics. These are very important. These are the separate plugs for that, for linking into the flight controller. And then check the build video when you're building so you know which plugs to take, how to direct solder them to the board, or if you're going to use the pins and do some sort of plug-in build, then you can do that as well, though a lot of people just direct solder. What I mean by direct solder is if I need to take one of these wires, I'll clip it and we'll solder it right into, let's zoom in on that, we'll solder it right into one of these holes in the board. Now I was talking about this guy here, that's the video transmitter, but we have to get the signal from somewhere, and that's where we bring in this case, since this is a smaller quadcopter, use a smaller camera mount. So this is just a tiny little camera. I can run off of the 12 volt output of the PDB, so you can see the PDB down here. I'll just solder this guy into the 12 volt, and that will give me the power to operate the camera, which then will send it out through this piece here and then into your goggles or your FPV monitor, so you can see through the eye of the camera on the quadcopter. Now your next very important part are your props. So make sure you have a lot of props. You'll need to have a clockwise and counterclockwise to go with the way the motors spin. So get these in sets of counterclockwise and clockwise. For this next part, I wanted to introduce my supply kit here, just to give you some idea of things that you should be picking up. These are, it took me a while to figure this out. I had to keep going back to the hardware store and other hobby stores to get some of these items. Now, this is solder. That's pretty important to get because we're doing a lot of soldering, and that does mean you get a soldering iron as well. the benefit of doing it yourself is you learn how to fix these. So after you crash and break, then you can repair your quadcopter on the field, or you bring it back to the shop and work on it. Here we have, this is double-sided tape, and this is double-sided tape as well. Pretty important if you want to stick things like your ESC to the frame. So if I pull this copter here, I did that under here. There's the ESCs are stuck to the frame using the double-sided tape, but also I have electrical tape, so I have electrical tape of different colors. Part of that is I can color scheme stuff. I can wrap wires in the different colors. So down here within the guts of the quadcopter, see, like, there's a red wire wrapped with red tape, there's yellow wire wrapped with yellow tape. I just do that for color coordination's sake. And then you see down here on the battery leads, you got the hot, you got your positive and negative. I have those color coordinated as well. Other tools, so small needle nose style pliers, wire clippers. This is looks like I got 20 gauge up to 30 gauge going in increments of 2. See if I can get kind of a zoom in on that. There you go, should be able to see that now. Really tiny screwdriver for working with some of the small screws. That's quite important. Baggies. Little baggies, very important. Keep all of the extra screws and fasteners that you get out of your kits. I actually went out to a store and I bought some extra pieces, so some extra screws. Those ones are metal. Let's see what else I got in here. I got some hex nuts, so I got even more screws and hex nuts. I went out and I purchased the 3mm ones. And here's another thing that I think is very valuable. If you go online, you can find some sellers that are selling these nylon screw kits. So it just looks like a little toolbox. And there are standoffs and fasteners in here. Let's put my hand for some contrast. There you go. And there are some little screws and then some little nuts in there as well. Very important if you want to change your standoffs. If you're putting your power distribution board down and maybe the standoffs are not as large as you want. So in my quadcopter here, I wanted to add some room. Oh, let's get my finger out there. So in this quadcopter here, I wanted to add some room between the PDB, which is kind of where my nail is there, and the flight controller, which is right here. So I added some extra room. I did tuck some things in there. It's just a way to manage your space within the quadcopter. I need to do a little bit of work on the inside as well. As you see with this guy, I got my receiver here is flopping around on the outside, so I have to get that tucked away inside. Again, that's where the double-sided tape comes in to help us out for that one. Toolkits. I got these ones from Stanley. This is not a paid endorsement. I just liked it that these can link together. So I just do that. And the other side I can do that. Then these can be picked up as just one unit. So let's move on. I'll just pop that out and we'll show you this unit here. So within this one, I have some 12 gauge wire that I use for creating standoffs between my PDB and the actual plug for putting the battery in. So if you wanted to, let's see. Okay, here's the PDB, and here's the plug. Now typically the plug will go right into your PDB here. If you get a bad crash and your battery gets ejected, it may rip and snap your PDB. So this is where this comes into play. For my quad here, I did a bit of an offset so that if I get a battery eject, I can, let's get that focused, I can have a zap or a zip tie on this and help pull that in so that my battery doesn't rip the PDB. There's some play here. So we'll see how that goes when I start flying this around. I haven't done a maiden on it yet. Other things of importance, these are glue sticks. Hot melt glue. This is a hot melt glue gun. Great for when you need to fasten some things onto the boards of your quadcopter and you don't want to use solder to do it, you want something non-conductive. This can help you out. And it's a great way also for spacing out power leads. If you're getting too close together and you're worried that they're going to come together when you have a crash and create a short, this is a way to insulate them. Always keep spare connectors that you're not working with, just tuck them away. You never know when you might need those wires. And one of the most important things is a multimeter, specifically for testing continuity. So this one has a couple probes on it, and testing continuity is very important to make sure you don't have shorts on your quadcopter. With the build videos that I've been watching, the builders have been showing you how to test continuity. Very important. Shorts will blow up your quadcopter even before you get off the ground. One last thing I found very important is getting a small kit for the screwdrivers. Getting some of these extra Allen wrenches, the small ones, are very important. You might find, like especially the 3mm hex nut ones. Got a small knife here as well for some fine cutting, and then some more needle nose for holding on to stuff. So I hope that was very helpful for you. I do recommend getting the extra tools and the extra supplies like these nuts and spacers, the nylon ones. Get an extra kit of those. I find I tend to solder these by accident and then have to replace them. You only get so many in your kits, as well as I mentioned the tools. So getting a set of small tools to help you work with the small components of the quadcopters is very important. Glue gun and electrical tape and double-sided tape, all pretty important things. Saves you running out to the hardware store again when you get through a build. So thank you for joining me in my shopping list video. Like and subscribe. If you have any requests for videos in the future, let me know and I will try and make those for you. Have a good one.